Welcome to Across the Balkans. Great to have you with us on the show. I'm Ludovica Brignola. Kosovo has been hit with some of its worst ethnic violence in more than a decade. On Sunday, a Kosovar police officer was killed during clashes in the village of Banjska in the country's Serb-dominated north. The gunmen, at least 30 of them, then fled, breaking into a nearby monastery. Kosovar police then entered the monastery, killing at least 3 gunmen and arresting several others. Authorities also seized large stashes of weapons, ammunition and radio equipment. The deadly standoff marks one of the gravest escalations in years and follows months of tensions between Pristina and Belgrade. The two neighbors have traded blame for the killings.
Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti left the local Serbs alone to worry about their future, and all the time he kept provoking them. I regret that some Serbs succumbed to those provocations. Albin Kurti is the only one to blame. Albin Kurti is the only one who wants conflict and war. No other man wants conflict and war besides him. His life's desire is to drag us into war with NATO, and he has no other desires. That's the only thing he does all the time. The only thing.
After yesterday, nothing can be the same any longer. The facts came out right in front of us, in our eyes and in the eyes of the international community, as well as in the eyes of everyone who has the courage and will see the truth of the region in which we live.
Kosovo's Prime Minister Albin Kurti has called the attack an act of terror carried out by what he said were criminal gangs supported by Belgrade. Serbia's president denied his country was involved, saying the slain gunmen were Serbs from Kosovo. The deadly clashes and siege came more than a week after the two countries met in Brussels for EU-mediated talks, which failed to produce an agreement. The EU's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, blamed Kosovo's prime minister for failing to implement an EU-brokered deal to establish an association of Serb-majority municipalities, which would give Serbs in northern Kosovo more autonomy. Pristina says the measures would risk its integrity. Tensions have been mounting between the two countries since local elections in April, when ethnic Albanian mayors took office in the north, where Serbs form the majority. Clashes in May injured dozens of protesters and NATO peacekeepers. Kosovo declared independence from Serbia in 2008, which Belgrade has refused to recognize. Let's bring in Angelusha Marina. She is a senior policy fellow at European Council on Foreign Relations and joins us now from Berlin. Thank you very much for being with us today. So how dangerous was this latest incident between Kosovo and Serbia in the grand scheme of things? I mean, compared to previous incidents this year and in the past, how dangerous would you say it was?
Thanks for the invitation. I think it was very dangerous and it still remains very dangerous. Now the dispute between Kosovo and Serbia is not only political, but it's also a serious security issue. You know, the potential repercussions of Sunday could have had spillover effect above Kosovo, beyond Kosovo, but also for the area, for the north of Kosovo area would have been, it was very dangerous, and it could have had, long-lasting repercussions. And hopefully this was also quite sadly so, because lives were lost, but it ended on the whole mayhem, the whole situation ended on Sunday, and then I think it continued with some police searches or similar for another day. But for now, it seems to be calm. But I think it's something that needs to be looked into in detail. What happened? How did it happen? And how to prevent it in the near future.
Right, border crossings were reportedly closed between Serbia and Kosovo following the attack and then the siege. How significant was that? And are we going to see more escalations and, as you said, spillover effects? Or would you say that things are calming down now?
Well, I think the reason why the border crossing has been closed is it's for security reasons and definitely related to what has happened on Sunday. So I don't see this continuing forever. Of course, it's just a matter of until the situation is clarified, and then things hopefully will turn to normal. But I think it has to be. This has to be taken very, very seriously, and I think Kosovar institutions have to be supported by internationals present in Kosovo in the form of KFOR and also ULEX, European Union Rule of Law mission to assess exactly what happened, how did it happen, and to work very hard on preventing similar armed incidents in the future. And so now I think we're dealing with a serious security situation in that part of Kosovo, which could have, like I said, serious repercussions for the region as well, considering the political and security context in Europe right now. And so if it's not dealt with utmost seriousty right now by all the international partners involved in resolving the dispute between Kosovo and Serbia, I fear we may see similar incident in different scope in the future.
Right, a security problem, but also a political one. We've seen how both Serbia and Kosovo were very quick to blame each other. Kosovo's prime minister has called the incident a terrorist attack and that the gunmen could have been supported by Belgrade. How far do you think is Kurti really willing to take this?
I think from what it was revealed so far, there was a huge amount of weapons, including heavy armored vehicles, somehow brought into Kosovo, which in my opinion raises the question of how did this happen in front of, the noses of KFOR, if I could say that, because KFOR has a mandate to not only man the border crossings with Serbia, but also to keep peace and stability, especially in that part of Kosovo. But also, how come this happened, in the presence of other security institutions of Kosovo, who have been trying to strengthen sovereignty, territorial integrity, and rule of law in that part. So I think this is a very important question to be answered. Whether this, I don't exactly understand whether this will be taken any further, but I think now we're talking about a situation that needs to be taken very seriously by all actors, and the government of Kosovo and the community in the north should be supported as much as possible to not only restore stability, peace and stability, but also to understand and try to avoid similar situations in the future.
And Yalusha, because you mentioned KFOR, I'd like to ask you actually if you can help us understand a little bit more. What is the current role of the KFOR peacekeeping force, and in which areas are they deployed? Would it really be possible for them to intervene in a situation like this, or would this really be outside of their remit in a way?
So the international mandate of KFOR is to preserve peace and stability in this part of the region in Kosovo. And so from what I understood on Sunday, the first responders are supposed to be and were the institutions, security institutions of Kosovo. But according to KFOR's statement, they were ready to intervene if need be. And I think by the end of the day, we realized that they didn't have to. But their mandate is to really keep peace and stability, and especially in this troubled region of Kosovo. And so I don't quite understand, again, I go back to the previous point, I don't quite understand, how come you have all these, we have seen so, large amounts of ammunition and all sorts of things that have entered Kosovo and entered the monastery. And so the question for me would be, what was KFOR? What was KFOR doing, and other Kosovo institutions to have allowed this to happen? Because, to be very honest, this can't happen in a couple of hours. Obviously, you need a bit of time for all these preparations. So, but if KFOR is to go back to their original international mandate, also to establish some sort of a safety zone around the border with Serbia, safety zone on the side of Serbia, so that they could be controlling and in charge of what goes on in that part of Kosovo, but also not I mean, also to somehow stop the smuggling of all sorts of other things that goes on there, and also just man the security situation and be very vigilant at what is going on around the
Just
border area.
one last question on the politics, because Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić denied Belgrade was behind the attacks, and instead he blamed Kurti for creating months of provocations. And the two leaders, we know, met earlier this year, but it seems their personal relationships really hit a dead end for now. Is this salvageable, do you think, in any way?
So I think President Vučić's rhetoric is nothing new. He tends to blame Kosovo for and this current government for all sorts of things. We have seen this happen since September 2021, when the first troubles started. First troubles of this kind started in Kosovo, in north of Kosovo, since Prime Minister Kurti and President Vučić became part of the dialogue process because of their positions. Before, the constellation was different. But now we have these two leaders who don't necessarily see eye to eye on anything. They sit on opposing ends when it comes to some sort of a political solution for the north of Kosovo. And if I could just add here, I think the main struggle here is who retains control of this part of Kosovo, of the north of Kosovo. I think President Vučić is making it very clear that he doesn't want to let go. He wants to maintain control in different forms, through representative political parties, through different armed groups, as we have seen on Sunday. And on the other hand, the Kosovo government is very adamant to extend territorial integrity and establish full sovereignty in that part of Kosovo as well.
Right.
So I think this is
go ahead. Yeah.
Where the clash comes from. Yeah.
Right. But meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has called the attack on the police officer unacceptable. Right. And how was the international community responding, and how is it responding now to the recent attack, but also ongoing tensions in Kosovo?
So there were definitely some very quick responses coming from the international community. There was also a very quickly organized visit from the German envoy for the Western Balkans. So I think in general, the reactions were quick and good to call out what had happened and to condemn these attacks on the Kosovo police in this case. I think the statement from the State Department from Secretary Blinken came maybe a day later, and unfortunately I thought it was a little bit lukewarm, because the situation is quite dangerous. Like I said, it could have spillover effects in the region in the context of current security and political situation in Europe. And U.S. administration, as an administration that has been always backing potential solution of the dispute between Kosovo and Serbia, I would imagine the reactions would have come much quicker, I would say, which they did from the embassy in Pristina, but also much stronger in condemning what exactly had happened, calling a spade a spade. But I think in this case, I have to add, in all honesty, we have to wait maybe a day or two longer to understand exactly what had happened, because it's not, in my opinion, it's not clear how did the situation evolve, and what were the, to what extent these preparations had taken part, and whether there is any information, how did this happen, how did it come to what happened on Sunday. This is not yet clear. Right,
we'll wait and hopefully understand a little bit more of what's the outcome of all this and how it happened. Enge, Lucia, Marina, thank you very much for being with us today and helping us dissect this.